I'm like, even if she just took off and for whatever reason ran around the back of the building, like there was no time for her to get away anywhere. It's like she just kind of, like I said, poof, just kind of vanished. And again, I kind of went out there and I was perplexed, and I'm looking all over the parking lot and I'm looking around the building, and I'm like, this is where did she go, and why? But again, it's like, what do you do? I look down at my phone, and I know I've got to get to work before too long, so I'm like, I guess this is not meant to be. I'll keep the money and whatever. So I go to walk back inside the building to finish my food, and when I walk back inside the building, and again, like I've just walked outside. I've been the only one there for probably 15, 20 minutes at this point. When I walk back inside the building, the restaurant is essentially full.
The Codega is a guide and a storyteller, escorting you through the night, lighting the way, warding off thieves, ghosts, demons, and other oddities. Along the journey, his companions would often share with him the most curious of stories that he'd record in his Codex. Perhaps you just might find yourself traveling with the Codega and sharing one of yours. Welcome back to Codega's Codex of Curiosities, where we chart the strange, the slippery, and just the plain unexplainable. Everyone, I'm your guide, Rye the Codega, lighting the way through the hidden cracks in our reality. Tonight, we're joined by a man who doesn't just believe in high strangeness, he lives it. Andrew has experienced the disappearing object phenomena for as long as he can remember, and just when you think his stories can't get any weirder, they roll right out from behind the toilet. Literally. From phantom foam pellets to what might have been a brush with a celestial being at Burger King. And Andrew's experiences challenge our sense of space, time, and what we think we know about the world around us. Okay, everyone. So before we head on any further, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show, please rate the show. I would love it if you gave it a 5-star, on Spotify. Throw that 5 stars out. That would be great. Leave me a comment. Send me an email. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what was your favorite episode so far. And without further ado, let's just jump right into this. So buckle up because this just isn't just another episode. This might be a glitch in the matrix. And with that, we're going to bring Andrew on. Andrew, welcome to Codega's Codex of Curiosities.
Hey, thanks, Rye. Pleasure to be here. It's still very surreal. It still kind of hasn't actually hit me this is kind of happening. I'm a huge fan, so thank you again for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate that. I appreciate that as well. So that means a lot to me, and I'm really looking forward to this. Now, is there? And I should have given you this a heads up here before we started. Is there anything that you want to plug? Anything that you are doing? Any endeavors that you want people to know about, or should we just jump right into it?
So for the time being, we can just jump right in. I do kind of have some irons in the fire, things that I'm working on.
Yeah,
Nothing's far enough along right now to get into all that. So for the time being, this will just be my kind of just I guess intro to the world, I guess, and we'll just get right into it.
for sure, for sure. And whenever that happens, when you are ready to do, to present anything, by all means, hit me up, and I'll make sure I give you a shout out and a plug for whatever you are doing. All right, Andrew. So
We'll look into it.
yeah, let's jump into this. Of course, we connected on Reddit because that seems to be the hot spot for connecting with people on Reddit.
It
Yeah,
is.
it is. Reddit seems to be. I find it like this Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. There's so much good, but then there's this dark side to it that I'm like, I don't
Oh,
like Reddit, but it is what it is. So, Andrew, why don't you tell us a little bit about the experiences that you've had, and then we'll dive deep into them.
sure. So yeah. So just to kind of give you I guess you and your audience a little backstory. So again, yeah, my name is Andrew. I'm 38. I live in North Carolina. I got a wife and a daughter. Um, but I've had a very strange life, and a lot of that has dealt with the paranormal. Um, like I said, just glitches in the matrix, altered reality, that kind of stuff. I'll be the first to say, I mean, beyond doing pot, one time in high school, and like maybe a beer here and there. I've never been one to do like the whole anything that's going to alter the consciousness, so nothing, not a drug user, anything like that. It's all been just these very um, just kind of visceral life experiences that I've had.
And
Um,
and before we go far, I think that's really important. Like, don't get me wrong. If someone wants to do any life altering drugs or conscious elevating drugs or whatever they want to call it, that's fine. But I think it's very important that we stay grounded in these types of experiences, because a lot of times we can, you know, credit something that happens to, well, it might have been that you were messed up on this or that, or you might have saw something, hallucinated something that really wasn't there. So I'm very adamant that this is an important thing.
yeah, and I'm the kind of same way. I mean, what people do with their, time, money, and energy, that's their business. People make their decisions as adults. But I just kind of wanted to put that out there that again, my experiences do not come from any like artificially altered state of consciousness. So I will say, so best I can tell, my mom's side of the family, when I was a kid growing up, my mom, her mom and dad, so my grandparents, and all of her siblings, my aunts and uncles, they had all of these stories about things that happened to them when they were growing up, different experiences with, ghosts and glitches and crazy synchronicities and all this weird stuff. And so when I was coming up, I and me of all my cousins, we hadn't had our own experiences at that point. So we thought it was all just complete gibberish and just kind of BS and just stuff that the grandkids told the nieces and nephews and stuff to kind of mess them and spook them. We didn't even think for a second any of it was actually real. We just did not believe it. And I was raised in a home where, look, I love my dad to death. We have a great relationship. He literally lives a block away at this point, so we're very close. But from the way he was raised, he's not a very open-minded person. He's changed a little bit today, but he's still very rigid, kind of set in his ways, kind of, downplays and kind of poo-poos anything that um, is beyond the conventional realm of understanding. So my mom often wanted to have those discussions as I was coming up, and my dad was always kind of like, well, he just either didn't want to or kind of couldn't allow himself to go there. So for a lot of my early childhood and stuff, um, really didn't have time to kind of entertain such things. But when I kind of got into my early teenage years, was when I kind of began having my own experiences um, that really have fundamentally transformed my life and my journey of just trying to figure out, again, like the rest of you, the big questions. Who are we? Why are we here? What are we doing? What's our how does all this work? And of course, all the questions that we'll likely, at this point, it seems we'll probably never have answers to, this side of eternity. But it's the stuff that really makes me tick and keeps me up at night. As you've probably realized, just through your, of course, when you're on the series here, sometimes finding people to talk about these things is difficult because again, I know from my own experience, before I begin to have experiences with certain things, and it's hard to relate to others that have because the stuff really does sound crazy unless it's happened to you, and then you're kind of forced to admit that there's something else going on here, and then you find a few other people that have had similar experiences, and then you start to think like, okay, like it's not just me, there's really something bigger at work here. So just for me, just kind of like I said, being an adult, having a family, working regular jobs and stuff, I don't come across a lot of people beyond just close family and a couple of friends I can talk to about stuff like this. So again, like that's kind of how I found myself on Reddit. And I am of the complete same mind you are. Reddit can be a complete time sink and waste of time, and there's a lot of junk. But for some of these fringe topics, that's where they do tend to kind of congregate people that want to talk about it. And there's a lot of trolls out there too, right? but you do kind of strike gold and find some people that are willing to kind of have this conversation. So that's what I was kind of on there looking to kind of looking to find people that were kind of open to having this kind of discourse. And then I saw your post looking for people basically like me that had unexplained experiences and things they wanted to share. So that's kind of how we got connected, just to kind of give background there. Um, so yeah, I mean, I know I shared a couple of topics with you in email. We'll just kind of see where the conversation goes. The biggest thing that happened to me when I was a younger man, which really began to really started my journey of like, okay, there's more to life than what we can see and physically, tangibly interact with. So when I was about 12 years old, my parents divorced when I was 10. My parents had joint custody. So I would kind of see my parents like on alternating days, dad Monday, Wednesday, Friday, mom Tuesday, Thursday, that kind of thing. So when I was young, me and my dad, one of our favorite things to do when I was about 12 years old, we used to have Nerf guns, like, foam, pellet blasters, stuff like that, which I still do with my daughter and her friends to this day. And I love it, kind of getting to like relive that part of my childhood. It's amazing. But me and my dad used to do this all the time. I mean, several nights a week. And the thing about it would be, we would blast all these, pellets and shoot all these darts. And we would always have a laugh because as much fun as that was, it was kind of a pain after the fact having to go around the house. It was a moderately sized house and collect all the ammo, And most of the time it would take a while, and we'd find some stuff, like down the vent or in the windows, but we'd always find everything that we used up, and it may take a while. It may not all come together for a couple days, but we always kind of found it. So one day when I'm 12 years old, me and my dad have been having like this epic, Nerf gun fight, like, just, the Nerf gun fight to end all Nerf gun fights, like just such a fun time. And we went to clean up after the fact and we found everything but this one medium size yellow foam pellet. And it was from a Nerf gun called the Master Blaster, one of the big cool Nerf things at the time. And it was always such an oddity because we pretty much turned that house upside down. I mean, you know, even places it couldn't have been. We took up all the vent covers and, like I said, got into um, the windowsills and down the sink drain. We really tore the place apart trying to find this one last ball that we couldn't find.
Okay. And it was a
And
ball. It was a ball?
yeah, like a medium size, just round yellow foam pellet ball from this Nerf gun. And like I said, we just so at the time it was just me and my dad. And if if you know my dad, he's ex-military. He's a minimalist kind of guy, super neat freak. So he just really at the time, and of course being divorced, really didn't even have a lot of furniture. A couch, a couple of chairs. We had beds in our rooms, but there just wasn't a lot of place to kind of hide stuff. And so that always stuck out that every other dart we found, every other ball we found, but this one last one that we know we had never showed up. And we looked for it for, every day after school when I was with him for several weeks until finally we just chalked it up to, well, it's not here. What are we going to do? And it always just, stuck out as kind of an oddity. Well, it was certainly a strange thing. But we, at that time, certainly never even considered anything, paranormal, anything like that. It was just, okay, life's weird, but you move on, go back to school, back to work, whatever. About a year goes by, I'm growing up, my tastes are changing. So a lot of those toys I had when I was younger, we eventually donated, we gave away to, um, friends, my younger cousins, Goodwill, stuff like that. So the point is, all those toys, all that equipment, I no longer had. Fast forward about a year after that, like I said, my parents are divorced. My mom had just got a new house about 7 miles on the other side of town. So at this point, I'm about 14, and I've never had any of that stuff in this house. At that point, I was into more like guitar and comic books and stuff like that. So I didn't have any of those kind of toys in that house, and didn't have any like friends that had stuff there either. So this was kind of my first, like I said, real foray into really thinking that something's up. So I got home from school one afternoon. I go in the bathroom to just kind of wash my hands, kind of freshen up. And while I'm standing there in our small bathroom, and we hadn't been in the new house very long, I just got this kind of this, sixth sense, this kind of like, tingle on the back of your neck that just the energy in the room changed. At the time, I didn't understand it. But now, through life experience, it kind of feels more like an energetic kind of shift. So I don't know what's going on. I just know all of a sudden I just feel weird and things don't feel right. So I'm all alone there at the house. I just got home from school. My mom, she hadn't got home from work yet. And I finish up washing my hands. And as I'm drying off my hands, something catches me out of the corner of my right eye. It's a very small bathroom, very, very confined space for a pretty tiny house. Um, and I happen to look over and I see this, again, medium sized yellow foam pellet Nerf ball, which looks exactly like the one we had lost 2 years prior, just kind of like ghostily come rolling out from behind the toilet. And I instantly, like, I had even forgot this had happened. It had been 2 years. Like I said, my taste had changed. I didn't play with those toys anymore. I had completely forgot about that even happening until I saw it. And as soon as I saw it, I instantly knew, like something like an alarm bell went off in my head. I was like, "Oh my God, that's the ball." But I instantly knew there was no way that it could be there because again it had been years, um, that I had never had those toys over at that house or anything like it. And we were very new to that house. I was helping my mom kind of renovate part of it. So I mean I knew everything in that house, and there's no way that that could have been there.
And I have a question. So like,
Sure.
I'm sure you cleaned the bathroom before. I'm sure there was like a deep
Mhm.
clean done. Like
My
this,
mom, like I said, it was kind of an older home because, like I said, my parents were divorced. It was in the home was in a more expensive part of town, like the older section of it. So it was a little bit of an older home. But wanting to take, good care of me, I mean, she was making meticulous care that the house was up to date and clean and all this kind of stuff. So she was constantly cleaning. I would help her. And like I said, the bathroom was very small. I'm talking maybe, gosh, maybe like 6 by 8 feet. I mean, just enough for a shower stall, a toilet, and a small vanity. Like there was not a lot of wiggle room in there. The kind of thing like you go in there, you see all that's going on. And yeah, we had recently cleaned. I mean, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt there was nothing like that in there or that should have been in
and it just gently rolled out like it.
there. Yeah. And it was like and the house was like the foundation, the floor was very flat. So it's not like it was just kind of gravity doing its thing. It was almost again, and like I said, I hadn't have been there and experienced it. I think it kind of sounded kind of crazy, but it was almost like some invisible force just kind of gave it a gentle nudge just to kind of get my attention, to kind of draw my eye to like, oh hey, here's this thing that disappeared and now it's back.
Or it literally vanished while there's still momentum from it the 2 years prior, and then reappeared, and that momentum carried through at this point as well.
I've never, in all my years of trying to make sense of this, I've never considered that angle. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it definitely seemed to have momentum behind it.
It's just
So,
all hey, we're just speculating
yeah,
here. It's not like I have an
100%.
answer, but yeah.
No, but I mean, it makes sense to me. So yeah, like it just kind of like ghostily rolls out from behind the toilet and like kind of just comes to a stop, like right in front of my foot, like front and center, like here I am, here's this thing. You can't deny this has happened. It's tangible, it's physical, it's real. So I freaked out. I called my dad. He usually got home pretty early in the afternoon. He lived across town. And I'm like, oh my God, Dad, you're not gonna, you're not gonna believe this. And I tell him, and at first he's like, because it's been 2 years. Well, what are you talking about? And once it kind of jogged his memory, he was like, oh my God, like that stupid ball we looked for you a month, 2 years ago. I'm like, yeah. And he like got really excited. He's like, oh my God. He's like, I can't explain it, but that's the coolest thing. So the way my dad described it, and again, now at the time, he had not had a lot of experiences with the weird and the strange and paranormal. Now he's had a few things going on that he still kind of tries to rationalize, but even he was the type that used to swear, well, this just doesn't happen. Well, it's happened enough now. He has to admit that there's something going on. But at the time, he used to watch a lot of, Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, stuff like that. So he couldn't explain it. But he was like, oh my God, it just seems like that thing was like hung up in Dimension X for 2 years and like just came unstuck and like came. That's how he described it. And
That
again, like
I think that's a great. I think that's a great way to describe it. It just came unstuck. Yes.
so we held on to that ball. I mean, for years of just kind of this trophy of like, gosh, life is just so strange and bizarre sometimes. That was kind of my first foray into thinking like, okay, like I had heard people talk about disappearing objects and stuff like that. But again, until it happens to you, you kind of write it off as just, oh, you were confused, you were distracted, bad memory, whatever. That was kind of my first thing when I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. Now, again, I have had since then, I mean, more experiences on so many levels than I can count, and we can get into it as much as you want to. Um,
Definitely. So, like, I've looked into this before, and there some people call it two different things. They call it a jot, which is just one of those things. That's what they call these reappearing objects. Just one of those things. There's disappearing and reappearing objects, or an aport. An aport is when some sort of it's a more of a paranormal term that this object just appears out of nothing, out of thin air. Though that this one was one that wasn't and then was again. So that's interesting. So yeah, they call it a jot, or I believe there's another term for it, or the DOP, which is a disappearing object phenomena. But has that happened again to you? Have you ever had any of those other experiences where something disappeared and then reappeared?
well, it's it's one of those things. Once it happened the first time when I was 14, you used the term momentum, and I think that's actually a pretty timely word because it feels like when I had that first experience when I was 14, that over time these kind of experiences did kind of build momentum, begin to happen more obvious and more frequently in my life, as if just whatever about me that was attracting these things kind of built up its own momentum. So 100%. I mean, even to this day, so I was 14 when this happened. It was kind of my first foray into like this world. And like I said, I'll be 39 in June, and I mean, even within the past few weeks, we've had stuff. I mean, and this is such a common and cliche thing, but it is a real thing. We have, like the vanishing Tupperware, like one day, and again, like it's like the only people that live here are me, my wife, and my daughter. My dad, he's close by. He comes to visit. He does not go through the Tupperware. But well, we're constantly going to buy new Tupperware because my wife will buy like an 8-piece set, and like it's brand new, pretty nice stuff, and within a month we're either missing half the lids, or we have all the lids and all the bowls are gone. And again, like we turned the house upside down thinking, oh my God, like it was my daughter hoarding something in her room or whatever. Like did we forget that we gave brownies to someone? But it's never enough to like account for all of it.
Because yeah,
So
you always try to rationalize it. You're like,
we
where
always
did
try
this
to
go? What happened? I must have did this. This had to have happened.
I mean, the money that, and again, it's such a cliche, but I use that because I've read a lot of people for whatever reason that tend to have experiences with bowls and stuff like that. So, I mean, the money that we have spent running out to Walmart or Dollar General to buy a new tuck, it disappears. Just a few weeks ago, my wife, she has very specific kind of pants she has to wear for work. She's a creature of habit just like I am. So she hangs once the pants are folded and pressed, hangs them in the same place in the closet every time like clockwork's been doing so for the 5 or 6 years at this point. So she's getting ready for work one day a few weeks ago, and she comes to me and she says, "Hey, like, have you seen my work pants?" I know exactly what she's talking about, and I'm like, "Well, no, but I mean, not my pants. Like, why would I?" So she's like, "Well, I've got to be store in an hour." So, anyways, long story short, the pants are gone, and we look through every place they could possibly be. Did they accidentally get folded and put in a different drawer, or did they get thrown away? Are they mixing with my daughter's clothes? I literally, like I said, I use the thing and turn the house upside down. The pants are gone. They're nowhere to be found. There's no trace. So again, like, what do you do? It's one of those things, right? It really is one of those things. So she, puts on just a kind of pair of black jeans, just enough to get by. The idea being the next day, gonna go out and get some more work pants. So she gets home from work that night. Usually she works like 6 to 11, so she gets home that evening, and of course I haven't had need to go through the clothes. I was kind of with my daughter the whole night. So she gets home and she's comes in the bedroom to change clothes, and next thing I hear, she's like, "Well, ha ha, very funny," and I'm like, "What the heck are you talking about?" And she's like, "Well, it would have been nice to have those pants when I needed them, several hours." And I'm like, "What?" Like, again, like, I'm so confused. Like, I've been on this couch playing video games with my kids since you walked out the door. Like, what are you even talking about? And so, again, just like magic, and again, why of all things, who knows? But the pants that weren't there a few hours prior, she leaves, she comes home, and just like clockwork, they're just back where they've always been, where they should be.
Like
And they're
hanging, they're hanging still.
and they're on the rack, folded, pressed, good to go. And look, the only people that were here, like I said, it was me and my daughter, and we were on the couch, playing shooter games the whole night and having popcorn. Like, no one else came in. There's no one, like, living in our walls. We're living in an apartment complex. No one, like, living in the walls, moving stuff around. So, like, it's just that's two examples. I could give you 100. It still happens this day all the time. But the thing with the ball was like the first thing that really kind of tipped me off. But yeah, I mean, to this day, I mean, it happens. I mean, probably at least once a week. I mean,
So
constantly.
it's just gotten to that point where it's just like crazy, like where it's just a normal aspect of your life.
It's part of my day to day at this point.
There is some sort of
Absolutely.
trickster playing a game on you. It
That's what,
just
that's
it's
what my that's what my dad says. Like, I'll share this stuff with my dad, and he does have his own experiences. But the stuff that does seem to kind of happen to me, my dad, like, the most he can make sense of it, he's kind of like, it seems to me that there is something, whatever you want to call it, that is just kind of trying to mess with you, and just to kind of drive you crazy, because it's this petty little mess that doesn't seem to really have a bearing on anything. Although sometimes I do have stories where it does, but a lot of the stuff is this kind of like nitpicky little mess that it's like, okay, why pants? Why a ball? Why Tupperware? But it is stuff that kind of comes and goes, and it kind of seems like it is just something nagging, like, just to, I don't know, distract, take your focus. I don't know, but that's what my dad says too.
yeah, it's these little inconsequential kind of things that don't really affect your life in the biggest way, but they're minor inconveniences. That's what I was looking for. It's like these minor inconveniences that your life can go on without it, but it's just an annoyance that you're like these pants or this ball. Like you said, you spent a month looking for it, and you know, yeah. So of course it'll get to the point where, let's just say it is some sort of trickster spirit. They caused you a month's worth of time of searching, and they're like, okay, this was worth it. Let's stick around.
And that's the thing. It's like it is like I said in the because I'm always trying to look for any kind of pattern in things to kind of like either predict future behavior or figure out why is this happening, where's it coming from. But like I say, it does seem like a lot of the disappearing object stuff, not the other people, sure, disappearing object stuff again does seem to be fairly inconsequential, but it's almost like enough just like to get my attention and just keep it in the forefront of my conscious, like, hey, I'm still here. This is still happening. You're not imagining it. You're not crazy. This is real. Like, look at me. That is kind of like it's just enough to like, get the focus, like, because again, it's I think that a lot of people like now in my life, I've reached the point where like with the paranormal and high strangeness, it's been a part of my life for so long that I'm fascinated by it. It's clearly part of my story and who I am for whatever reason I may never understand. But I do have those days where I'm kind of like, man, I just want to be normal, you know? So I have a lot of those times like I kind of like wish it wasn't happening. So early on I went through all the mental gymnastics to convince myself, hey, this isn't happening. There's got to be a rational explanation, whatever. But again, it comes to the point where enough happens, and then when like other people start confirming things independently that you've experienced, witnessed, heard, whatever, again, it's like it keeps coming back to remind me, like, no, I'm still here. You're actually seeing this. This is happening, just to keep it in my consciousness. Um, so again, that's like with the disappearing object stuff, unless that's still a regular thing that happens. Um, and like I said, I've got a ton of stuff, but the other thing I shared with you when we initially talked,
Yeah, I'd love to get
mm,
into that.
this has got to be the one. I mean, out of everything in the past almost 25 years, this really takes the cake. And I have replayed this in my head so many times, and I can't make sense of it. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and yeah, to this day, it is literally it just boggles the mind and defies the senses. But so back in 2011, um, August of 2011, about the time, I'm traveling to work one morning. It's pretty early. It's probably 7 o'clock. I usually got to work between 8 and 9. So there was a Burger King that I frequently would stop at and get breakfast. To this day, I love their croissant sandwiches and hash browns. It's just my breakfast of choice. So I pull in the Burger King one morning, and when I first pull in, and this was in the city of Danville, Virginia, um, kind of sleepy little town near where I was living at the time, you old kind of mill town. But Danville, Virginia, if anybody knows that area in your audience. So there's a Burger King. It's off Piney Forest Road. If anybody's watching, knows where that is. So I'm pulling into Burger King one morning, and when I first pulled in the parking lot, I was a little I was a little weirded out because usually even that time of morning there was a decent number of vehicles there, usually older folks, and they're getting their coffee or retirees, stuff like that. So I noticed when I first pulled in the parking lot was essentially empty. There was like one car that was like way back that could have been for like an adjoining business. So the parking lot was essentially empty besides me. And I thought, well, maybe they're closed for water leak and maintenance or something. But like I love these croissants and I'm starving, so I'm like I'm just gonna go park and walk up to the door and just see because I've got plenty of time. And the thing is, I usually even I'm getting a little bit better about it as I get older. But I've kind of always been like a chronic procrastinator, like kind of last minute kind of guy. So this was one of the days like I had enough time to like not just like get in and get out. Like I'm actually gonna go in, like I have time to like sit down, really savor my meal, like find my tea, find my flow, and really properly start my I was like actually really proud of myself for being kind of productive that morning. So I park the car, go up to the door, and it's open. So I just walk in to kind of see, what's going on. As soon as I walk in the bin, and I've been in this place 100 times before, walk in there, the place is like eerily silent. Usually you could hear background noise, the timers on the stoves, or just footsteps, or a sizzle, or a gust of wind, or something. Place is like eerily silent, and it's instantly noticeable. Um, and I noticed that the place was there was no one there. There was no clientele, no customers, no one behind the register. Um, like literally, there's like I'm very obviously the only one there. So I kind of just looked around, just kind of peeking back to kind of look and see if anybody was like way in the back. Saw no one, and just again like that kind of sixth sense, like just got this weird feeling that like just something wasn't right. Just got the tingles, and my hair was standing up, and yeah, I don't know. And I at first, again, you kind of go through the motions, like, okay, like, am I just lacking sleep? Do I need caffeine? Like, am I just having an off day? What? But something just did not feel right. So I'm almost about to leave and head out and go get some breakfast down the road. And right before I'm about to leave, this young lady uh, walks up, I guess, from the back like kitchen area, and she walks up to the cash register, and she just kind of stands there, and she kind of had like a like a pseudo kind of grin. She was a young African American lady, probably looked maybe 25, 30 years old, just kind of guessing. And she just walked up, and she just kind of stood there and kind of like just kind of looked at me. Didn't say like, "Hey, good morning, can I help you?" Just kind of looked at me. And it was very odd. But I was like, again, like I'm hungry.
I need my
So
croissant.
I
Yes.
need I need my croissant. Like I came all I've invested this much. I need my exactly. So I walk up, and I'm just like, hey, good morning. And finally she kind of cracks a little bit, and just the usual, hey, what can I get you? So I order my croissant sandwich combo. Um, and it ends up being like, $4.39 or whatever it was. And so she says it's gonna be that. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I go to pay, and I realize that I don't have my wallet with me. And I was like, man. And like, I mean, I get like I'm a creature of habit, and I do things consistently the same way every day to this day. And I just couldn't imagine why I wouldn't have my, I'm like, why would I even leave the house without, but anyway. So I told the lady, I said, gosh, I'm like, I am so embarrassed. I'm like, but I'm gonna have to pass. I can't pay you. I'm like, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Because I worked in customer service, so something like this would have been was a really big deal to me. Um, and she just kind of smiled very, very politely, and she was like, "Don't sweat it." She's like, "It's on me. I got it." And I said, "Okay." I'm like, that's amazing. I'm like, you are so nice and so kind. I'm like, but again, I work at the time I was working as a cashier in another business. I said, so I don't want your till to be off. I don't want you to get in trouble. I said, so I'm like thanks, but no thanks. I'm like, I really appreciate it, but I'd kind of rather you didn't. And she was like, no. She's like, it's totally fine. Just go have a seat. I'll bring it out to you. And I was kind of like, that's like, that's really cool. I'm like, like, thank you, but if that's not, she's like, no, it's fine. So I go to sit down, and at this point, I've kind of just, I've kind of loosened up a little bit. I'm like, man, this is just, a nice person having a good day in a good mood, wants to do something nice. I'll pay it forward later in the day. Just don't kind of overthink this. So I go, and I sit down, and within probably 5 minutes or so, she comes out to my booth. She brings me the food. It's hot, fresh, delicious. Um, and she really didn't have much to say. She just kind of smiled politely, and I thanked her. So Anyway, at this point, I'm still very aware that I'm like the only one there. She's the only person that I've seen. There's no other foot traffic in the building, and I still have this weird kind of sense about things. So she goes to walk away from the table after she delivers the food. And at that point, I happen to realize that I had a few dollars scrunched up I'd forgot about in my other pocket. Why that just occurred to me, I I don't know. But I just realized, like, I'm like, oh my God, I do have some money. So I wanted to make things right. So I turned around and I was going to walk back up to the counter, but it was odd. Like, this lady that had just brought the food to my table, instead of walking back up, like going back around where they kind of do business from, she walked out like the front door of the store out towards the parking lot. And I was like, well, this is odd. But I'm like, well, maybe she's, someone's bringing her something, or she's going out for a smoke break or something. But I wanted to go like be like, hey, I realize I have this few bucks. I want to make this. I can pay for this. So I get up and, like, I mean, it's only, a short hop to the door. So I go to follow her out the door. And when I get outside, I mean, like, she's completely gone. And I mean, to kind of set the stage, like, this is a fairly open parking lot. There, there's some businesses nearby, but like they're kind of they're a good, they're probably, a block or so away. It's a huge open air space. I was probably, you know, maybe 8 to 10 seconds following her out the door. So like there's nowhere she could have gone where I wouldn't have seen her. Like, so when I tell this sort of people, I'm like, okay, I'm like, even if for whatever reason she got out the door, someone was waiting for her, she jumped in a car and they sped away, there was no time for any of that. I would have seen or heard something. I'm like, even if she just took off and for whatever reason ran around the back of the building, like, there was no time for her to get away anywhere. It's like she just kind of, like I said, poof, just kind of vanished. And again, I kind of went out there and I was perplexed, and I'm looking all over the parking lot and I'm looking around the building, and I'm like, this is where did she go, and why? But again, it's like, what do you do? I look down at, my phone, and I know I've got to get to work before too long, so I'm like, I guess this is not meant to be. I'll keep the money and whatever. So I go to walk back inside the building to finish my food, and when I walk back inside the building, and again, like, I've just walked outside. I've been the only one there for probably 15, 20 minutes at this point. When I walk back inside the building, the restaurant is essentially full. There are people at not all the booths, but a fair number of them, looking like it usually looks when I would stop there in the morning. Recognize a few faces, your seniors, sipping their coffee. You've got, grandma with the kid here on the way to school. Like, it's the usual traffic. There's people behind the counter, they're taking orders. You can hear the noises of the fry, and it's just like it's business as usual. And I stood there for a minute, and I'm looking. I'm like, what? How, how is how is this? Like, I'm like, I just came out. Like, there was no one here. And again, like, I didn't know what else to do, so I just kind of, I was like, I went back to my booth. My food was still sitting there. It was still pretty hot. So I took a couple more bites of my food, and again, I'm looking around the restaurant. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm like, where did all these people come from? Like, if have you ever seen
Yeah.
Stephen King's The Langoliers?
Langoliers. I was thinking that like 10
Langoliers,
seconds, 15 seconds before you said that. I was like, sounds like Stephen King Langoliers, like you weren't in sync with time.
right? and again, and I had watched the Langoliers. So at this point, I was probably 25, 26. Would have been 26. And I probably watched the Langoliers when I was 11 or 12, but it wasn't something I had thought about in years and a very long time. But when I began trying to kind of piece together in my head what had happened, I'm like, this is like some of the Langoliers. This is like time kind of like catching up. I couldn't explain it any other way. So I was super weirded out. So I finished my meal. I walked up to the counter. There was a couple of young guys standing up there, and I was like, "Hey," I'm like, "I was, I've been here for a while." Told them what had happened. I'm like, I just wanted to, kind of give a shout out to this young lady. She was so nice to me. She paid for my meal, but I've got a few bucks. I'm still willing to pay. And they were kind of like, "Well, you know, we're like the opening crew. Like we're the only ones here. Like, who is this?" And I described her. I never saw like a name tag. So I didn't get a name, but I described her. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, she's, African American. She's got this body type, maybe, 25, 30, has hair pulled back. And they're looking at me like I have three heads. They're like, dude, they're like, we always open. We've been working this shift for 6 months. Like, we don't have anybody like that here. And they're looking at me. They're like, are you okay? I'm like, and again, I'm starting to wonder, like, God, am I okay? But again, like I had to get to work. It's like, what do you do? So I'm like, hey, I'm like, well, I'm sorry for wasting your time. You know, have a good day. And I go to leave, and I take one more look around, just kind of pinching myself, like, did this really just happen? And just again verifying, like I said, now everything. And again, like the feeling of normalcy had come back. Like I didn't have that weird, tingly, surreal feeling. Like the place felt like business as usual. And and then so when I walked outside to go get back in my car to go to work, where previously the parking lot had been empty except for my car, parking lot's full. So all the people that are now inside enjoying their meal, all their cars, all is kind of as it's supposed to be. And again, like I said, I've got about a million other stories, but that one to me is probably about the best one I've got. That it just takes the cake as far. I've had a lot of weird stuff happen, but that to me, which was again a literal like time skip, glitch, whatever. It's never left me. It will never leave me. Um, I tell that story to anybody that'll listen, whether they think I'm crazy or not. Just it is just such a fascinating thing. And again, if I hadn't lived it, I wouldn't believe
Yeah,
it. But once
I
something like that happens, it changes you. It sticks with you.
I can relate to this completely with these time skips or something happened that just you can't, and that feeling that you talk about as well. I personally had experience about a year ago, very similar to what you're describing, where uh, I don't know. I went to walk out a certain exit and the whole world shifted and I ended up walking out a completely different exit. I was in a park and I was walking out this one exit with my dog and I was at a completely different exit and this feeling in my like this uneasiness, like I said, it was like almost like this nauseated, um, dizzy kind of feeling. I'm like, well, what's just happening? Kind of like almost, yeah, like I don't know how to explain it, but I've had this feeling before, and that was my first real kind of glitch in the matrix type of experience, and it was something incredible, And I called my friend like this just happened. I actually did a video like I can't believe this just happened. But let's go back to enough about me. Let's go to you. So this glitch or this pocket dimension or different world that you entered happened before you got to Burger King, though, right? Or just
It
as you
would
entered it.
it would have had to. I mean, 'cause, and I have replayed this scenario in my head so many times, for the past, God, so many years now, again, trying to approach it from every angle. And I will never be able to explain it um, in a typical rational fashion. It just defies all conventional logic and reason. Now, again, like I will say, kind of like we talked about that feeling. So in my life, having these experiences with the paranormal, high strangeness, glitch, whatever you want to call it, again, usually it is accompanied by that kind of feeling where again I do kind of feel like the energy has shifted. It's like a very surreal. Things almost become kind of like dreamlike. They feel very kind of ethereal. Just to know like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore, right? So kind of replaying that day in my head, like yeah, when I was like on the way to on the way to the Burger King that morning, just cruising along, listening to some rock music, like I didn't detect anything. As far as I was convinced, all was fine with the world. When I first, I guess it was when I pulled into the parking lot and noticed the usual crowd wasn't there. That's when I kind of began to be like, this is different. Um, and then of course, like I said, when I, came back in the restaurant after trying to chase the lady out and come back see all the people there, like as weirded out as I was, the energy instantly felt different. Like, okay, now we're back to normal reality, normal time. You know,
You jumped into the frequency that brought like I I had I was just on a show recently called The Occult Rejects where I talk about time skipping and things along this line where we're time jumping and whatnot or dimension jumping might be the better way to call it. And I believe that we have our frequency is dialed into this reality of sorts. And it kind of is like a bungee cord that will always bring us back. And somehow yours got extended past, and you took a different exit, even though it was the same exit, and you crossed through some sort of threshold, some through some portal or something along that line, and you entered up into this other reality. And Langoliers is something that I have talked about, three or four times in past shows. Yeah, it extremely it's very creepy, you know. And for those who haven't seen Langoliers, it's very interesting. It's kind of like these people are out of sync. They're just and then they have to wait in a spot and let time catch up to them.
it's a,
You know,
it's a phenomenal film, and by today's standards, the acting is super campy and the VFX are laughable. But from a story standpoint and just the possibility, like, okay, what if something like this actually transpired? Like, it's I love to rewatch it, as campy as it is, because it really is just it's one of those things that sticks with you, especially you begin to have experiences with high strangeness. It's kind of like, hey, is this like predictive programming? Like, but it's one of my all-time favorites. I love that film.
I totally agree. So now with this girl, um, do you think maybe like I do feel that you were in another dimension, but is it possibility that maybe she was ethereal, like maybe like an angel, a spirit, or do you feel that she was just a worker from that dimension and you crossed over into that to her reality?
I and again, that's one of
And
those
it's only
things.
it's all
It's
speculation.
all speculation. And again, I've considered it so many times. My again, all I got to go on is my gut, and my gut, how I felt about it in the moment, and kind of trying to kind of like recap and process afterwards. She felt spiritual. She even in the interaction, even with the environment being as weird as it was, she just felt different. And like I said, she even when she volunteered to pay for the meal, like I've had other people do similar things in my life before, but it was just like this. She had this quiet kindness, meekness, which just did kind of feel otherworldly, for lack of a better term. And like I said again, like because after she brought the food, she just like got up and almost kind of like I don't know. It was almost kind of like her movements were almost kind of robotic. Like she turned from the table and just kind of made like she was walking, she wasn't running, but kind of made a beeline for the door. Like, okay, my work here is done. So, and again, like in the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, if she's a spirit, angel, whatever, okay, you saved me $4. Well, what is $4? But I mean that $4. I mean it's the story
Okay,
that it's an experience that changed my entire life.
I want you to think about this though. Okay, $4. It's nothing. Okay, but what else did it? What else was the effect of this? You didn't leave that restaurant at that time to go to
Correct.
work. Okay,
Correct. Correct.
now could it have been that if you did, you were destined to get into a horrific accident or something else major could have happened? And this guardian angel decided to create this pocket dimension, give you your free food where you could sit down and spend the time that you were supposed to spend in that restaurant instead of leaving instantly and something else could have happened.
Yeah, I mean, like it's 100%. I mean, like it is all speculation that's crossed my mind too. Was it, like I said, not even like I said about the money, but just about, yeah, delaying, getting to somewhere else. I don't know, but it's just it's one of those moments, kind of like the Nerf ball thing, like those little moments that is just like kind of dialed in the point, like okay, you're not imagining this, you're not dreaming, you're not crazy. Like it's like just something keeps like kind of showing me throughout my life. Like again, there's more to this. Like it's just beyond the veil. Like it's right there. And so I've spent a lot of my life trying to again figure out patterns and did I do something to bring about this or manifest this or how do I tap into it? Thus far, I mean, after all these years of trying to figure it out and talking to people, it's like I'm no closer to figuring it out. And it seems like whatever it is, kind of likes to be hidden, like just out of reach. Like here's this little bit so you know that I'm real and present and active and involved, but I don't want you to know too much or get too deep or be too hands on. So right now, I mean, I haven't deduced any kind of pattern or rhyme or reason as to why certain things happen or when or how they just kind of come and go. But again, as I've lived experiences like this, definitely have ramped up quite a bit. And I'll share this real quick just to kind of because I've thought too maybe there is some kind of like a genetic component, like maybe some that's kind of got this connection with the paranormal maybe could have been passed down from my mom. So I told you going back to our earlier parts of our conversation that when I was young, like her side of the family, they had all these crazy stories. And but we just thought like all the cousins, all the nieces and nephews just thought it was just that, just stories. Until we began to kind of have our own stuff going being like, okay, maybe and again, like I always thought, for instance, that on my grandma's deathbed, that she would come out and she would say, "Oh, remember that story about, the ghost train and the fireball and the shadow person and all that was just junk to mess with you." But I mean, her and my grandfather and aunts took it all to their grave, swearing like, "No, this happened, and your uncle can tell you about it or whatever." I mean, they swore by it. So interestingly enough, even with and it's funny because even when you have your own stories, you become more open minded, but you still even with your own stuff, you hear stuff, and it still sounds kind of like that's not a thing. Even once you have your own experiences, like if somebody were to watch this and they're like, that guy's full of shit. Like I get it. I I'm not even mad because like if I didn't live it, I would think so too. But my mom used to tell me they had like a huge number of occurrences at this house that she lived in when she was about 9 years old. It was a house in a small town called Warsaw, North Carolina, and she had all these stories, all this crazy paranormal stuff that happened at this house in Warsaw. So a few years ago, after her mom, my grandmother died, her and her siblings um, spent a few days on the road, just kind of reminiscing about old places they lived, in childhood and stuff like that. And they were going back and taking pictures of old homes they lived in and stuff like that. And one of the houses they end up at was this house in this town of Warsaw. and they were just going by taking pictures, like I said, just kind of reminiscing. And while they were there taking a picture, the lady that owned the house ends up coming out, and she was like, "Hey, like, who are you strange people taking pictures of my house?" So they strike up a conversation. They don't mention anything about the stuff they had been through as kids. They're just like, "Oh, hey, we used to live here back in the day." And so this lady that's been living at this house now, probably the past, 10 years or so, she starts talking to my mom and my aunt. And she's like, "Well, this is gonna sound crazy, but she's like, when you all lived here, did you ever experience anything weird, or strange?" And so they were kind of playing, like, they knew, but they were kind of playing dumb. They're like, as to lead the question. So they were like, "Oh, well, what do you mean?" And so this lady begins basically saying all the stuff that my mom and her siblings saw when they were kids is like caught in some kind of a temporal loop, like still going on, like in this minute, and she's seeing like and experiencing the same stuff. So, but I again, I do think, like I said, knowing now, like I know that, like I said, my mom and aunts and uncles, I think they had some kind of a connection to that side, supernatural, whatever. And again, I've just wondered if some of that could be genetic, or there's some kind of components. Like, my dad has stuff, but like it's nowhere near on the level that like that side of the family has. So again, it's looking for patterns. Maybe they don't exist. It's just speculation. But it's the stuff you kind of the path you kind of go down trying to figure stuff out and make sense of things.
Super fascinating. And Andrew, I want to say thank you so much for sharing all this. Like you did it, you did it so well. Great, amazing experiences. Really, more of a glitch in the matrix type of experiences that you've been having, and it just captivating. Now, before we wrap this up, you said your grandma said something about you said a vanishing train.
Yeah, this is a
The
doozy.
I if we can just touch on this because there was something that I've talked about recently. So, which vanishing train is this?
Yeah, so when they were when my mom and her siblings were all very small, and I would have to get the details from my mom exactly what town. But when they were very young, they lived in this house that was kind of out by itself, and there was an abandoned set of train tracks that ran in front of the house. Or as far as they knew, the line hadn't been used in a long time. So they say they're all asleep one night, and middle of the night, 3 4 a.m., they're all woken up by what sounded like a train derailing out in front of their house. Like they heard, like, just screeching metal and people screaming, and just they knew exactly, like it woke them all up. And so they all, like they say, my grandfather ran into their bedroom and he was like, "Put on some clothes, we got to go outside and see if we can help these people. There's been this huge accident." So they're all like, clamoring to get together, and they run outside, and like as soon as they cross the threshold of the door, like all the noise stops. There's nothing going on. There's no train, there's no people. The night is completely still, and like there's just, so at that point, like they're all wound up and freaked out, and they're thinking, is this like a shared hallucination? Like, again, going through all the motions trying to explain it. They couldn't. So again, life happens. What do you do? They eventually go back to bed, and they kind of, force themselves just to carry on and go about the motions. Well, a couple of weeks later, my uncle, um, again, because of stuff they had seen in that house, different, specters and stuff like that, he checked out a book from the local school library on like local North Carolina, ghost legend stuff like that. But he hadn't really looked that deeply into before he checked that. He's just cool ghost stories. So he brings it home, and they start going through it, and come to find out there actually was a train in that area that 100 years or something before had derailed in that spot. huge loss of life. And the train was destroyed, and people for the past 100 years had reported encounters with this ghost train, or these sounds kind of stuck in like this, phantom time loop. And I'd have to get with my mom and my uncle, again, to get like the town name and stuff. But we looked into it years ago, and yeah, I mean, it's this, so my mom's side of the family has, for a long time, just kind of been kind of like me, kind of found themselves attracted to these kind of experiences. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Well, okay, that's not the one that I was referencing, but that's an incredible story unto itself. This train derailment that they've experienced, kind of like this residual hauntings is what we call them, when things keep replaying over and over again, like on a stuck record, and it just happens over and over again. Wow. Andrew, I want to say thank you so much for spending the time, and like I said, your storytelling of your experiences was phenomenal. So thank you again so much.
I appreciate you, and it was an honor to be here. And I'm still, like I said, I've been watching you for a long time. I love your stuff. All your stuff is great. One of the more recent videos on the Wizard of Oz was phenomenal, and your video on Mothman, I've watched that 2 or 3 times. So I love your stuff. Again, very humble honor to be here. Thank you for having me, and thank you to the audience. And hope you have a great evening. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and I appreciate you as well. So thank you.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Okay. I want to thank Andrew so much for coming out. So, and whether it was a wayward foam ball defying the laws of physics, or an angel disguised in a fast food uniform, some mysteries just aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be experienced. Like Andrew said, once we experience these things, that's what makes us believers sometimes. So I hope you guys have your own experiences just so you can be a believer as well. Maybe nothing too crazy. Maybe just a free meal from Burger King or McDonald's, your favorite breakfast place. And again, a huge thank you for Andrew for stepping into the Codex and sharing his stories that blur the line between dimensions, destiny, and even a little bit of deja vu. And to you, fellow traveler, keep your curiosity wandering, keep the light lit, and always find your way home.
Beneath the stars where shadows grow, the Nephilim's echoes whisper low. Bigfoot roams through the forest deep, and Dogman prowls where the brave won't sleep. Across lost history we wonder why, seeking the truth that time tried to hide. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. UFOs streak through the velvet skies, aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks, in the void of secrets a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the Codex flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. Through the velvet skies, aliens watch with unblinking eyes. The paranormal hums where silence breaks, in the void of secrets a lantern wakes. Through hidden realms and stories untold, the Codex flame is a light to hold. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit, through the darkness don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come, and always find your way back home. Legends rise from the Earth's deep core, a lost legacy we can't ignore. With every step, the veil grows thin, revealing worlds where the strange begins. Keep your curiosities wandering and the light lit. Through the darkness, don't ever quit. In the Codex, the mysteries come and always find your way back home.